You want to show me how much of a warrior, how much of a badass you are. You want to show me like all this macho masculine stuff. Like, go inside and feel your goddamn feelings. That's the warrior shit.
You're diving deep with Destin. Sex, love, and evolution.
Man versus bear. This has become a pretty widespread wildfire of a social media conversation over the past week or two. Really putting forth the hypothetical if you as a woman or your daughters, I think is how it was originally put forward, were to encounter either a man or a bear in the woods by herself, which would you prefer for her to run into?
Would you rather be stuck in a forest with a man or a bear?
Bear. Man is scary. With a bear.
What I've heard about bears, they don't always attack you, right? Unless you like fuck with them. So maybe a bear.
Depends what man, but probably a bear.
If I survive the bear attack, I won't have to see the bear at family reunions. The worst thing the bear can do is kill me.
And this has created a typical cacophony of discussion and argument and the debate that really says a lot about where we continue to be in our conversation around gender, the dynamics between men and women, and arguably, first and foremost, around women's safety and or the lack thereof, and how we both see men in our society, how we like to see ourselves as men in our society, and there's the countless videos and reaction videos that have been created on TikTok and Instagram and social media as a whole, as well as the comment sections of arguably the big thing to me is the amount of defensiveness that I see in far too many men in response to this conversation. Women sharing sometimes hypothetically, sometimes very vulnerably, about experiences that they've had and why so many choose the bear. Why would so many women across this country, across this world, they would prefer to run into a bear alone in the middle of the woods versus a random man? Why is it that so many women choose bear? And even more, why do so many men not understand why? And maybe the bigger question that we're going to be exploring today is, and in that lack of understanding, why do so many men respond with a sense of either defense or needing to prove that they're safer than a bear? And so, of course, given the nature of this podcast and the nature of my work, I gravitated to this conversation, and I knew that I would want to address it. And I was, scrolling through social media, and I saw a Facebook post by a newer colleague of mine, Ben Raya, who I liked what he had to say about this. Quite frankly, it was my favorite of the things that I've seen, and of course, Facebook just reset it, so I have to refine the post. But I want to share it with you because I think he nailed it, really. Men, we fucking missed the plot on this one, so I'm not going to hold back on this post. Once again, men have an opportunity to listen to what the experience of living under patriarchy has been like for women, and once again have largely punted the football of responsibility. I see posts from men trying to evade the truth of the matter in every possible way. But I'm safer than a bear. Bears aren't safe either. But I'm a nice guy. Well, bears eat you. This is about so much more than whether or not you personally are safe or if bears in general are dangerous. This is about hearing the experience of women. They are telling us quite plainly about the pains of the last 10,000 years, pains that have not yet been resolved. We all sound like playground boys trying to evade responsibility when someone gets hurt. I didn't do it, you did it. I'm not wrong. Enough with the defensive posturing and blamelessness. I don't fucking care if you did it or not. Actually, I do, but the fact that you supposedly don't really isn't the point. Boys argue about whose fault it is. Men show up to help hurting people. I'm going to repeat that one. Boys argue about whose fault it is. Men show up to help hurting people. And this conversation is an indication of people hurting, women particularly. Imagine someone coming up to you and saying, well, my experience at my job is so bad, I'd rather be in the woods with a bear. And you say, well, I'm a good coworker. Imagine someone coming to you and saying, my experience with my dad is so terrible that I'd rather be with a bear in the woods. And you respond, well, I'm a good father. Imagine someone coming to you and saying, my experience at school is so bad that I'd rather be with a bear in the woods. And you retort, well, I'm a good classmate. Jesus Christ, how are we this dense and defensive? We need to get over ourselves. Women are talking about how traumatic their world has been, and all we care about is that everyone knows we're one of the good guys. Guess fucking what? That's not being one of the good guys. That's villain shit. Enough. Because here's the cold, hard reality. Open up and actually let it land. Women don't feel safe around men. Women don't feel safe around men. Not because all men are bad, but because enough men are bad and they don't know who's who. Because too many men that said they were safe turned out to be dangerous. Because too many men are more concerned about their own blamelessness than are about the victims right in front of them. I think we know damn well what this world is. I think we know damn well what happens to 1 out of 4 women or more. And we care more about being on the good guys list than we do about hearing the pain of women. I think I have a little mess up here. And we care more about being on the good guys list than we do about hearing the pain of women than we are one of the good ones. My dudes, please open your ears, open your hearts, let it in, let it hurt. It has been that bad for women. It has been that bad for your wives. It has been that bad for your sisters. It has been that bad for your mothers. It will be that bad for your daughters. Unless we fucking listen and change things. And the first change starts with yourself. I don't care if you are one of the good ones. Congratulations, here's a cookie and milk. That isn't even close to enough. We have so much work to do. Woo!
True.
Well fucking said. So with that, welcome Ben Raya to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, yeah.
That
So
like,
Ben, aside
sounds
from
so much spicier coming out of someone else's mouth.
well, I gotta say, reading it, I feel like reading those words aloud. I feel like, yeah, I could have written that, as in not necessarily I'm that eloquent at my best, not always, but more like every word. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Well fucking said. And Ben Raya is a men's work coach and tantra facilitator. We'll get into that in our show notes, of course, as well. But regardless, to be honest, I wouldn't care if you had 0 credentials, background, training. That's besides the point to me. You're a man who fucking gets it. And you don't just you can't just get it accidentally. So I'm really interested in diving in with you as well as to how you came to have the perspective that you have, because it is one that's very closely aligned with my own and seems way too rare. So I want to dive into that for a moment. I also just really acknowledge the fact that you clearly have listened. And that's what I think a lot of this is about. And one of the things that I think has really come to set my own work apart, and where a lot of the work that I do comes from, is that I have spent a lot of time for a long time listening to women, listening deeply, listening to what is being said, listening to what's not being said, listen to the commonalities across women, listening to the differences, and just letting it in. And as you put in your writing so eloquently, letting myself fucking feel it and feel it deeply. And with that is what has led to changes in my being. But I also want to note one more thing, is that this aspect around the dangerousness of men, and how a bear doesn't say it's safe only to turn around and prove that it's actually more dangerous. A bear is what a bear is. And men are so much more complex than that. And we can put up facades, and we can seem to be one of the good ones, nice ones. And okay, I think I can trust this one, only to turn out, no, that's the one who hurt me most of all. And unfortunately, and this I think is a big one as well, I'm dedicated to being the best man that I can be. And I've caused pain. I've hurt women. And to me, the big part of the work as a man committed to walking this path isn't even so much to look at how I differentiate myself from those other guys who I am so much better than, but more to be in this continuous introspective process of where is my shadow? Where are the places where I still carry my wounds that can come out and cause harm to others? Because unfortunately, particularly those who I have cared the most about have experienced the absolute worst of me. And as much as I'm into like grand gestures of love, I'm into outpourings of honor and love and respect, but also with all of that, again, like those that I've loved have experienced my anger, my rage, like where I can go when I'm in my triggered states. And what I've really come to believe, this path of devotion to the feminine that I carry and that I committed to walk, the most valuable part isn't, or the part that's most important isn't just the speaking to the beauty aspects of the feminine, but really it is my true devotion is that constant commitment to bettering myself, to rooting out. It isn't even just bettering myself, it's healing myself. It's fucking healing myself. Because any and every place that I am still wounded is where I hurt others. And I've got to say, particularly women and the women I care about the most.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we could spend the entire episode just unpacking like all the gold nuggets that you just dropped. And yeah, first off, I just want to thank you for having me on here. This is really, really lovely. I'm excited to dig into this topic, and I'm really excited to hopefully walk away from this conversation individually, collectively, whatever, was like I want some new insight. That's what I want out of this conversation with you, is like, because this whole thing popping up is such a flashpoint, and it's bringing multiple things to the surface, and it feels ripe. Like there's a real opportunity as men, individually, collectively, to actually just like sit down for a minute and look and be like, wow, there's a chance to start doing something differently. What is it?
Well, first of all, I love that you have that perspective. We all want to be a good
guy. Yeah.
I love that you have that perspective as well as that optimism. I gotta say, I have this mixture of feeling because I've been in this conversation for a couple decades. Actually, no, we're pushing 3 decades, and there are ways in which we have come far. Particularly, the Me Too movement advanced the conversation so much in some ways, and in other ways, it has saddened me by how how much too many men have dug in their heels and had their own backlash, refused to still like let it in. And in many ways, this feels like it's part of the same conversation. It's part of the same conversation. It's women on a larger collective level saying, we're carrying a lot of fucking pain, and we just want that. Well, A, we want it acknowledged, and B, what can we fucking do? And men, can we be teammates on this? Why are we alone in that fucking woods dealing with this in the first place? And that's how I think it is too much in the world. It's like rape, for example, sexual assault. These are seen as this is a women's issue. Women, you've got to learn how not to be raped, and men be a good man. Don't rape. And where it's like, no, like you want to be a good man, you can't just like not cause harm. But how can we actively be part of the healing? And part of that is up-leveling the culture of men, shifting the culture of men so that we're not fostering a culture of violence towards women. And then it's also about how we can be active forces of healing for the women in our lives. So those are the two sides of this. But this conversation, like what we're having right now, like how do we let this permeate the culture? How does this become more of the mainstream conversation amongst men? Versus, again, you go to these comment sections around these videos about this, and it's filled with men who seem to be either largely like defending and trying to prove that you should pick the man and not the bear, or trying to prove that he himself is safe. And I in some ways, I want to say quite the opposite. Like, I know the ways in which I'm not safe. It saddens me fucking greatly, but I know the ways in which I'm not safe. And with that knowing of the unsafe aspects of myself, it's what drives me more to learn to become more safe.
And I think, I mean, there's like multiple key elements I've been slowly honing in on in this conversation, in my own process. And what you just said is a key piece. Is it's like, it almost seems like one of the most dangerous things you can do, especially as a man, is build your identity around being a good person. Because as soon as
I've certainly grappled with this.
As soon as I do that, I'm blinding myself to everything you just named. My shadow, my wounds, the ways I hurt people, the ways I don't show up. Like if it's a core piece of my identity, I am a good person, or it's really important to be a good person. Of course it's a good goal. I'm not saying we shouldn't aspire to it. I'm saying when it becomes a central piece of my identity, to the degree that it does, I become more and more incapable of seeing my own shit. Because it upsets the apple cart way too much. Hold on, no, I don't do that kind of stuff. What are you talking about? I am a good person. And that's, so I feel like there's a heavy layer of this in the conversation. And it's not to say they're wrong. It's saying it's the wrong frame of how to understand ourselves. Because to the degree that I cling to it, if someone says, oh, I want to talk about the collective experience of women, and immediately I'm like, whoa, hold on. Why are you talking about this? I'm a good person. The most important thing right here in my psychological framework is that you reflect back to me that I'm a good person. And that's not what you're doing right now. So for me, what I heard with everything you just said is a willingness to take yourself out of the role or the identity of, or the character of like, oh, I'm Destin Gerek, the good person, and put yourself in that role of like, oh, I know I've hurt people. I know there's stuff I still carry in my body that's harmful or problematic or dangerous. And I'm really willing to look straight at those things and be with them. And that's the first and necessary step of actually healing or shifting any of it. So there's this strange double-edged sword where it's like we almost have to be willing to put ourselves in the position of, the scoundrel. right? Because there's so much in our culture of like just don't be the person whose fault it is. So as soon as there's any kind of problem, especially in the masculine collective, there's immediately this diversion that's been baked into all our nervous systems of like, oh, just make sure it doesn't land on you, right? Because we're a punitive culture. Whoever's fault it is going to get their shit kicked. So make sure it's not you.
I want to let you know about a relationship hack that's going to change your life and open the door to deeper intimacy than you've ever imagined. The secret is the power of touch. Some good friends of mine at LIT have formulated a line of world-class sensation tools that will help you and your partner drop into your body, regulate your nervous system, and stimulate a cocktail of gooey love hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. I use these tools myself now, and they've opened new worlds of sensation, pleasure, and connection for me and my lovers. If you're curious, if you like to explore, if you're craving a deeper experience of connection, pleasure, and intimacy in your relationship, head over to litup.love, that's litup.love, and check out their amazing products. Use the code DESTIN to save 10% on your order.
So for the man who's listening to this, what do you suggest?
To take yourself out of the center of the story. It's not about Ben Raya. It's not about Destin Gerek. This conversation in particular is not about any of us. This is, what you've already prefaced so well is like on the most foundational level, what I've heard from women is that they just want to be heard. And I've heard that because I'm listening to them, as you said, like that's part of why that post came through with so much heat on it, which perhaps was necessary. I don't know, but that's how it came out, is because from my perspective, like I work with a lot of women. I work with couples. I work in tantra containers where I routinely hold space for women to purge their trauma. And I've heard story after story after story after story of the darkest shit you can imagine. And so for me, it's maybe I'm fortunate in that way that there's nothing in this narrative we're currently involved in that's surprising to me. It's like, oh, I know exactly what this world is. I know how it lands on everybody, but especially women. And so there's a willingness to take myself out of the center of the story and to just be like, to hold space, right? That's what we all talk about in men's groups. We get together and we talk about the masculine holding space and being the perimeter and being the frame and blah, 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 all this bullshit.
Wait. Hold on, Ben. Not everybody listening to this right now has ever had an experience like what you're speaking to. So let's just... there is a lot of value in these things that you're speaking. There is value in learning to hold the frame, to create safety, create a safe space.
Oh,
so,
I deeply agree, and that's kind of my point. Is it's like collectively, as the men's work microcosm, we've been talking about all these things for months and years. Like this is our bright shining moment to do that. Like that's literally what the feminine is asking for, is like, please just be the still, silent, solid space that can hold us while we grieve the truth of reality.
So I think that holding space and allowing the space for, which I recognize as a certain irony in us speaking about this, because we're two men having this conversation of being silent and allowing space for women's voices around this issue, and there's none present in the speaking, though many listening. I do think that is step one, well, I do think that there is more that is being asked. But there's acknowledgement that's. I think that too many women do have this experience of, this world is not safe. Men are not safe. I have no idea what man is safe or not safe, or who I can actually trust and let go with, and who's not. And the worst part, though, is the sense that as a larger society, or the larger set of men are in denial about that truth. And like, what would this world be like? How different would things be if we were in a more clear-eyed, fully open-hearted recognition of, yes, this is a reality that, as you put it, your mother, sister, aunt, daughter, etc., lives with day in, day out. Now, we may have created all these workarounds to manage the fact that this world is so unsafe. But there is this heightened awareness for safety and well-being that the average woman carries around with them that's very different than what the average man carries around with him. And too many men don't really get that. I only came to understand for similar reasons as you, Ben, because I have listened to countless, often horrific stories from women. And you mentioned the 1 in 4 statistic around sexual women's experiences with sexual assault. I have no idea what the true number is. No idea. Because in my world, it is nearly 100%.
Same.
Now, that could very much be a factor of who I am and who you are, that we end up attracting and drawing in women who have these traumas in their history. It could be a factor of who you and I are, that women are just more open and honest and sharing a truth that does not come out in where these 1 in 4 statistics end up coming from. But again, I end up experiencing more of a surprise when I meet a woman who doesn't carry some form of sexual trauma. I feel like I've met a unicorn.
Yeah, same. And
so it's more
not just
of...
I was going to say it's at least, again, it's like hard to say is the spaces I hold and occupy drawing a disproportionate amount of this experience. But from what I see, it's not just that nearly every single woman has this trauma in her history. There's many of them, or multiple. It's not just something that happened once. It's something that happened 10 different times in 10 different ways. It's something that still is happening. It's something that still is a threat. And I think that's the thing that I'm not seeing men really get, is that, like, it's present for them. It's not something from the past. It's not a memory. They're like, no, this is, to use the bear and the bear analogy. It's like, no, the bear is still, like, in my backyard. The bear is still in the woods. The bear is still a threat. This isn't something that has been resolved. It's not something that is getting better enough. It's like in the collective somatic body of women, the threat is still as present as it's ever been. And when I feel that in my body, it feels terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that men really need to learn how to feel, is like we're taught to feel invulnerable, to feel invincible, to cling to power, to at all costs avoid feeling powerless, avoid feeling vulnerable. And it stops us from being able to connect to what's actually true with the collective feminine in this conversation. Is to just, like, actually, like I said in the post, to, like, sit down, open your heart, feel it, and, like, let it fucking hurt. Because when I hear these stories from women, it fucking hurts.
It fucking hurts. I'm hoping that our listeners experience a couple of different things from this. One, for the men listening to hopefully have that encouragement and even permission to let themselves sink into this conversation more deeply, to let the words in without defense or deflection or diminishment, and knowing that there's nothing you need to do, especially if that is new. There's nothing really that you need to do as a man besides just fucking let it in and let yourself feel it. What you do with it will happen over time, but the truth is, if you really fucking let it in now in a way that's more or deeper than ever before, I believe that it can fundamentally change you, period. And so it is even less about like what you do from that point forward. When you feel that to the degree that it seems that you have felt it, Ben, and I have certainly felt it, something in me fundamentally changed.
Absolutely.
How I experience myself, how I show up, and how I experience women it's different. And so the doings is secondary. Let yourself fucking feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully
I was going to say it's hard because there's obviously a part of me in this conversation that feels frustration that the masculine isn't already showing up in this way. And also there's a part of me that feels a lot of compassion because for the most part on the collective level, nobody fucking taught us how to do this. Like nobody taught me how to close my mouth, open my heart, and feel until I was lucky enough to get exposed to spaces, the kind of men's work that's actually teaching this, the kind of tantric containers that are actually like really teaching you to go into your body and feel what's there, which is like necessary if you ever want to sit with someone else and feel their somatic experience. And so I feel very fortunate. Like there's nothing special about me. I'm not some magnificent specimen of human male that was born with the capacity to feel. Like we all are born with it. We all get it shut down. And for most men, it stays that way. And then this whole conversation is like, come on, man, why don't you like feel your partner? And like, I can feel on the masculine side, the frustration.
Why
like,
we don't feel our partner because we don't feel ourselves.
Right. And that's like a whole
we don't feel a partner because we don't feel ourselves.
Pull the lid off. Yeah. So that's like, if you want me to drop into my body and have emotional somatic contact with you, I can't necessarily do that without feeling my own shit, which of course, as an American male, I've been chronically avoiding my entire life. So like I'm trying to, for all the men listening, I'm trying to properly frame of like, what we're asking you to do is in fact terrifying, hard, challenging. Nobody taught you how to do it. It's not fair. And it's really brave to step into this. And most importantly, the women in the world absolutely fucking need us to do it. Like, you want to show me how much of a warrior, how much of a badass you are. You want to show me like all this macho masculine stuff. Like, go inside and feel your goddamn feelings. That's the warrior shit.
Fuck yes. This is the needed part of this conversation. What you're doing as well is you're leading with compassion, compassion towards men while also challenging them to step forward. And it's that combination that I think that we need. Not one. Pure compassion can turn to simple coddling. Pure challenge without the compassion just ends up feeling like what men quite often end up feeling too much of these days in our larger mainstream conversation is, oh, so you're just telling us how we're bad, how we're wrong, how men are evil, blah, blah, blah. And either men internalize that and disempower themselves, or they just completely shut off, further do not let that in and go into defensive mode. Mm-hmm. And so what you're really leading with here is showing like, no, man, like I get it. And I think that both you and I have had to face this in our own experience as well. It was fucking hard. And it's not done either. There's this constant process of learning how to feel within ourselves, feel more deeply. There's an overlap with the work that I do with men around sexual self-mastery and becoming extraordinary lovers. Is I'm like, the root of the way that I teach men about sex is like, get out of sex as a mental thing, like figuring out what to do or the conquest or, and into more of the felt sense of like, feeling into her body and the constant communications and the yeses and nos, opens and closures that are happening here. And the only way you can do that is to first do that within yourself, to learn to feel things in your own body that you weren't previously feeling. And I think that these two things, what you're sharing about right now and that go hand in hand. That to really understand and feel the emotional experience that women have had and are going through, you need to be able to be in touch with your own emotional experience. I think one of the reasons why men can be so callous towards women and others' experiences is because it's like, why the fuck should I give a shit about your trauma when nobody cares about mine?
Whew. Yeah, that's absolutely present. And I just want to name it's like 100% the wrong response. And I completely get it. Because what I think we collectively do as men is like, we get taught to just ignore it all. Don't feel it. Don't acknowledge it. Don't remember it. Don't talk about it. Don't bring it up. Don't seek resolution. Like, just keep moving forwards, right? That's the masculine directive, is just keep, leave all that behind and keep moving forwards. And then, so when other people want to be acknowledged in their trauma, it's like, oh, hold on, what? We're talking about trauma? I have tons of that shit. Okay, I didn't know we were going to talk about it. Let me talk about mine. But it's unfair unless you want to be the one to start the conversation. Then by default, you're kind of in the listening seat, right? Because when someone else brings up the hard thing they're dealing with, and your response is, oh, well, let me tell you about the hard thing I'm dealing with, that really isn't productive. And once again, it's, in my opinion, it's a bypass around actually feeling. It's like, you're inviting me to feel your thing. Hold on, let's instead talk about my thing. And it's like, I can feel like, if I just like tune into the times I've done that in the past, which I absolutely have, there's like a choice point of like, oh, I can drop into my heart and my somatic body and emotionally be present with what you're experiencing right now. And I'm choosing, consciously or unconsciously, I'm choosing to instead retreat back into the mind, into storytelling, into, making it about my thing instead of your thing. And so again, there's this deep collective retreat pattern, I think, for men, because we are terrified to feel the somatic reality of our bodies, let alone anyone else's.
Very well said. So again, this is where I think there's two sides to this. Yes, especially when we're in these conversations, when women particularly are speaking to their pain, their trauma, their wounds, and are basically like, we need to be fucking heard and witnessed in our reality, the pain of our reality to be acknowledged. It's just simply not helpful for us as men to go into any sort of, hey, what about me? Period. It's now, at the same time, one of the big reasons why we do that, we as a collective men, is because collective we don't really have this spaces carved out very well for, well, where is the space for us as men to have these conversations? Now, increasingly, there is this like world of men's work, but unfortunately, it's still pretty fucking niche. That that most men have zero connection to this, to even the idea of men's work and supportive men's communities, spaces where we can be actually like raw, real, vulnerable with one another and not have to worry about how this is going to be used against us. And we need these spaces. We need these spaces both in these like things like men's group, men's coaches, therapy, all wonderful things. Don't get me wrong. Yay, let's do it. And I also think that we need spaces in our larger public sphere, similar to what's happening with the man versus bear conversation. That's a conversation happening in our larger public sphere. Like, what will it take for us to have more of this same, the same kind of full public sphere conversation around the pain and the trauma that men carry, as its own conversation, not as a add-on to the pain and trauma of women's conversation, not as a butting into that conversation, but simply as its own conversation.
Man, I feel like if we can answer this question, we can heal a whole lot of the world, because I think that is a major hinge point of whether or not we move towards larger collective healing, is how do we engage men to talk about this before women bring it up. And I think if I could make a sales pitch for why we should be having these conversations, particularly as it pertains to the feminine, but as we've already said, like, if we really want to be able to be with other people when they feel their truth of their bodies, we have to have, at least to some degree, already gone there ourselves in our own bodies. Because if we're just completely in body avoidance, we can't ever meet someone in that space. So we have to go there. And that part feels hard and scary. But what I really want men to understand, here's my sales pitch, is she's not inviting you into hell. She's inviting you into paradise. When you gain the capacity to feel your whole body deeply, to feel your whole emotions deeply, of course there's a lot of shit to move through. It might be really hard. It might take years, and it is so fucking worth it. Just on your own, it is so worth it to be deeply in connection to my body, to my five senses, to the emotional experience of being alive is its own divine reward. And if you want to talk about taking connection with a partner to realms of intimacy, pleasure, ecstasy, bliss that you can't even imagine, this is the way to get there. You open up this pathway by clearing all the shit out of the tubes. And what you have is a five senses, emotionally rich, fully intimate connection with other people, whether you're talking about a friend or lovemaking with a lover or a partner. It's so unbelievably rich that I think, like, that's what I want men to hear if they're like, well, why the hell should I do the work of leaning into my emotional body? And the reason why is because the feminine, archetypally or literally, however you want to view it, is actually inviting you into paradise. But it requires, as paradise often does, it requires initiation. It requires to journey through the gates of hell that we've been avoiding, because not only is it remarkable enough on my own to be fully in contact with my body, to be able to have a rich sensory experience of the world, to have an emotionally profound experience, all of that alone was worth the work it took me to get here. But then, if we really need to get men on the hook, what that does to your love life, what that does to your sex, what that does to your connection with your partners, let alone connection with your friends. Like, my relationship with my kids is way better than it was. My relationship to my partner is way better. My relationship to myself is way better because of doing the work of getting into my body and learning how to feel my feelings, feel my senses, and not just be, as the meditation teachers say, a head on a stick.
So let's make this real. When you say that those relationships are all way better, what makes them better? Sell me on it.
It's the difference between reading a story about something fantastic and actually living it, right? When I frame it that way, I think it makes sense to people. That, if you read a story about someone having the best cheeseburger ever made versus if you got to go be the person that ate it, I would hope everyone would choose the second thing. Like, yes, I would rather be the person who gets to have the experience of this amazing, delicious dinner rather than read about it in the newspaper tomorrow. And what I don't think people realize, when we're so chronically stuck in our head, as most modern people, most Western people, most males in particular are, you're essentially reading the newspaper the day after. You think you're experiencing your own life, but you're actually reading the newspaper. The body has an experience, and then the mind tells you a story about it, and you experience that, not the body. So doing this work is the same as making the choice of like, oh, I'd rather be the person in the restaurant eating the delicious meal than read about it later on. So it's an invitation out of the mind, out of the story, out of the narrative, into the actual direct experience of what's happening right now, which is so much better than me sitting here just having thoughts about my own experience.
Yeah, I love how you put that. I've thought of it as like, how much are you actually experiencing reality versus your thoughts about reality?
Mm-hmm.
Everything being like reality passing through an analysis where an intellectual experience of what's here in front of me, what the five senses are experiencing in this moment. And again, sex is such a great carrot around this because it's a night and day different experience.
Mm-hmm.
When you're truly embodied and connected and experiencing sex through this versus through this veil of your intellectualization of the sexual experience.
Yeah.
Night and day.
So different. I remember like some specific moments when it shifted for me, where it was like, it was almost like reality, like flipped inside out, except for it had been inside out the whole time, and it flipped, where whether it was sex or body scan meditations or getting a massage or anything, like I noticed that it was like I was watching it, and my perception or my energy or my experience was like going out of my body and watching what was happening. And then I thought that was the same as feeling it, right? Because if you've been chronically in your head, as most of us are, you don't know what you don't know. And there was like a specific moment where I felt it like flip over, and it was like, oh, I'm feeling through my body what's happening to my body, rather than looking at it and thinking about it. And it really is the difference of like watching someone else get a massage versus being the person who's getting it.
So let's loop this back into this man versus bear conversation. I think that part of what we're saying is that for this to collectively change, men, we need to connect to ourselves. Where we started on this notion of like really listening and letting in and feeling the experiences and the message that women are sharing, that there actually is often a step before that, which is learning to listen and feel to the messages of our own body.
Yeah.
And the two can go hand in hand. And as we deepen into this, our physical bodies, our felt sense, the fullness of what we have experienced in this life, as well as what we're experiencing now, that ends up being a pathway, an entryway for really being able to feel and connect and take in what she is sharing with us as well.
Right. Because as far as I understand human reality, I can't feel you if I can't feel myself. And if I'm afraid of feeling me, then I'm afraid of feeling you.
I like the way you put things, for sure. I think that one of the things about this conversation, or these types of conversations in general, is that men can often feel like we're just being attacked. This is more misandry. This is more about the narrative about men are perpetrators, men are bad, men are evil. And there is its own damage that can come with if that's the primary messaging. And this is where I think that it's on one hand, yes, I would love for our cultural conversation to shift to itself to be one that holds a greater sense of compassion through this process, as much as I fully understand why it is often seeped in anger. One of the reasons why it's seeped in anger is because there has been so much denial over so long, and continues to be so much denial. I know, speaking of my own dangerousness, I know one of the places where I can get most triggered, or where my rage can come out the most, is where I feel like I am not being heard, where I feel like my boundaries are being crossed in some way. I am trying to have get back to my place of safety, starting first and foremost with needing to feel validated or heard, and I get angrier when I feel like these other attempts that I've made are not getting anywhere. My anger or my rage can come out. And that is very, very much what I think has happened on a collective level with women. Is there are many different things and ways in which women have collectively over a very long time tried to get through to the collective men around the intensity and the depth of what living under a patriarchal system, meaning designed by men, largely for the benefit of men, has the impact that has had on women. And really the change that's being called for. And we don't have a clear map, but I do believe that it starts with that listening. When there is this, when we hear this harshness, can we inside of ourselves, inside of ourselves, really hear what's really going on, which is there's actually an invitation to us as men to heal.
100%.
Is an invitation for us to heal. And everybody benefits from us doing so, including on a pure selfish level, men, we benefit from taking in that message and healing. Yes, the work is hard. Yes, there's an element of that work that can feel like hell itself. And as Ben has said so well, and the other side of this is paradise. On the other side is a greater feeling of pleasure, a greater feeling of power, a greater feeling of freedom than you'd ever known before. And certainly a greater place of where real connection and deeper, healthier relating with women can come from.
Yeah, and there's like you named, there's this piece that's arguably selfish, but it's a good carrot on the stick of like your own experience of life will get orders of magnitude better if you do this deep work that we're talking about. And like, maybe I just have a great imagination so I can go there, but like when I imagine what would the world be like if even like everybody just felt 10% safer. Like even like if we could even just make that change, like it, like if we could see that like if you could drop someone into that reality where in the world where everybody feels 10% safer, and then take them back to right now and be like, is that worth working for? They'd be like, abso-fucking-lutely.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Abso-fucking-lutely. So on the largest collective scale, I feel like that's where my flag is planted. Like I want the world where everybody feels more safe. And of course, I can't change the whole world. I can try. Hopefully, I can make some sort of meaningful dent in the problem. But like, I almost want to like just get everybody moving in that direction. Because of course, like you say, there's a lot of understandable antagonism in this conversation, and there's kind of this bind or this catch-22 where, you know, women are very mad, and I don't blame them at all. And men are like, whoa, hold on, like, why are you mad? And it's like, oh, because you're not listening, and they've tried to talk about this while being not mad, and now they're mad. That's how the somatic channel of anger works. When a boundary is crossed, anger escalates until it's resolved. That's a simple biological truth of in the animal body. So on that
I certainly
sense,
know that on a personal level.
Yeah, me too. and so on the sense, there's like, I get why there's so much heat and tension in this conversation. And if one thing would solve it, it would literally be like, all right, can we just start listening and acknowledging the problem? That's a very actionable step, whether or not we can immediately go there. But I also want to just like get everybody pointed in the same direction of like, imagine the world where we all feel safer, where all of our nervous systems are a little more at ease, where everyone isn't, you know, looking over their shoulder or clenching their jaw as much as they used to be. And like, if I could snap my fingers and do one thing, I almost want this, like, this ollie ollie oxen free, you know, in the battle of the sexes, where like, we're like, okay, everybody sucks. Everybody in some way is part of the problem. Men have done tons of shit wrong. Women have done not as much, but, you know, plenty of shit wrong. That's not my conversation, but it exists. And be like, all right, cool. Like, nobody's the good guy. Everybody's the problem. Nobody's getting, you know, tied to a pole and beaten with a stick. Let's just move towards a better world. And I wish there was a way to just like snap the fingers, cool the tension, and move in that direction. But in this real world of bodies that keep scores, we need to show the fuck up and listen for a little while until women feel heard in this problem, until they understand that we understand the truth of their reality and we care enough to change things. It's not gonna go away, and it shouldn't go away. It's gonna get louder and louder and louder and angrier, and it should get louder and angrier until we fucking listen and change things.
Ben, this is a conversation that I think that we could go on and on about and continue to find deeper elements to explore. Mm-hmm. And we've got to wrap things up.
Well, great. Hopefully we solved something. Because that's what men do.
Totally solved, done. And for our audience, our listeners, if this activates something in you, please send something in either through the contact form on my website or destingerek.com or on Spotify. You could leave a message straight from this episode. What does this raise for you? How did you personally respond to this whole man versus bear meme and conversation? And where do you see us going from here? What can we do? What's our solution, and how can you be part of making this dent for a more positive change? So, if you as a man are hearing this, you're like, yes, I get this, and I also see where my own growth is to do. Reach out to either of us. Ben, where can they find you?
Easiest place is on Facebook, and then from there you can find me all the other places, but Ben Raya on Facebook. That's where I'm most active. That's where I pay attention the most. That's a good place to start and see what I'm about, and we can go from there.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes as well. And on my side, if I referenced earlier my sexual self-mastery training as having a strong crossover with this, and that it's really rooted in learning to get in deeper touch with your physical body and the subtleties of the communications that are happening within your body. Now, it is designed specifically to improve your how you show up in the bedroom, your sexual experiences, and the truth is, it expands into all of this. All of this, as you come to know your body, as you're experiencing these greater subtleties and the communications of your body, you will understand her in a different way, and you will experience far more pleasures in the bedroom. And yes, this is also the pathway to learn to last as long as you want, gain real ejaculatory choice, experience full body orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms, male multiple orgasms, all those very sellable, marketable parts of what sexual self-mastery has to offer. But even more than that, it is this element of becoming more healed and whole, which is what this conversation is ultimately all about. As we do that work, everyone benefits. Thank you so much for Ben for being part of this conversation, for adding your voice increasingly into this field, for sharing your voice and your wisdom with our listening audience.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to dive in.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, please rate. I love ratings and reviews on your favorite podcast platform. Share. This is a still relatively new podcast. You rating, reviewing, sharing, liking, all those types of things help a lot. It helps boost the algorithm, helps other people find out about these things. When people are checking out, be like, oh, yeah, I like that review. That reminds me of me. Maybe I would like this too. So please follow through. It's the best way that you can support this podcast. Reach out to Ben or myself for any support that you need. And we will see you on the next episode of Diving Deep with Destin, Sex, Love, and Evolution. Thank you.